Thanks for the reminder, Justin.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, guys. All right, back to you, Alana.
Justin. Thank you. And so that break for anybody watching this later was all about us trying to get closed captioning to work. We can't get it for this meeting, but for future events, we are going to work on it and make sure that happens. So we'll get back to, after our 5-minute break, we'll get back to this piece. I'm using really similar colors from the sky to block out what is going to be my little water course here. And my rationale for that is that on calm days, so often the color of the sky is reflected in water. So I think it's kind of an easy color choice to go with on that. And I'm blocking it out in a lot more space that I'm going to actually use. Like I'm going to be coming back over this later on to kind of put plant material in front, but this gives me all kinds of background to work with for the water course in case I decide to kind of make it a little bit bigger. It'll still give me the opportunity to work with that size. So I'm just gonna fiddle with my computer for a second to make sure I can see what you guys see. I hope I didn't move this. There we go. Do my best.
Still looks great.
You good? Okay. It's hard to.
Still looks good.
Okay, cool. So where are you guys at? How are things coming along? Do people want to kind of share where they're at this point? We're not quite at the halfway point because we did some talking and some breaking, but it's we're not far from the halfway point. So I'd like to kind of see where you guys are at. Are you comfortable? Are you feeling like I'm moving too quickly or too slowly? Quite open to feedback here.
Alana, what colors did you use to do that background? Where your water is gonna be and where your, the one that you say that you cheated over the break.
Yes, I used the exact same colors.
Okay.
So yeah, so I say I cheated. I used the exact same colors and figured it would allow me some time to speak a bit more if people have questions and paint less.
No, that's okay. I'm just teasing.
Same colors.
Okay.
And
thanks.
So of course. Thanks for the question. And then if you want to add highlights, white is always a really nice, easy color to choose for highlights. And typically, I'm just going to do like a really soft brush here and kind of wiggle it. And I don't even know, I might end up painting over this later. I don't really know. I'm just going to have a bit of fun with it. But if I do this, you kind of get the impression that it may be reflecting the clouds above. It might just be light hitting in a certain way. And we've all seen how ripples on the water have that really nice, smooth, kind of curvilinear shape to them. So I'll probably come back and put a bit more blue in this area later on. But for now, I just want to have this sort of curvilinear sort of approach. I'm going to make that a little softer, blend it a little bit more with a purple. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to leave this for now, and I'm just going to plunk this paintbrush into the water to help me clean it later. Here's a tip though, if you have nice paintbrushes, you don't want to leave them in the water overnight. You want to give them a good rinse and clean them right away to take care of that, your investment. Okay, so we've been working with these cool blues, purples, grays, off-white, white, and now we're going to introduce the real fall colors. So I'm going to just kind of playfully squirt out a bunch of paint on my canvas here. Not my canvas, my palette rather. And I'm going to use the same approach on the palette. And again, this is not me talking from like any accreditation. This is just how I do my process. And I like that you can blend it when you kind of put things in a circle. We'll put, I think I'll put red, orange, yellow, gold type colors in a circle of like the warmer colors. And then outside of it, near the yellow, I'm going to put a green because I tend to really like to work with yellow and yellow green and sort of that grass color that you find in the fall where you get those golds, those sort of like almost grays, like a golden green, the colors that you typically see as the leaves change. So I'm going to put yellow next to green and then have the warm colors in a circle. So start with a super bright red, just a primary red. We can assume we have some sugar maples maybe in this area. what will I do here? I'll put the red here. And my favorite color for fall is orange. And I'm going to use, this is called an Indian Yellow Hue. I don't know if that's an appropriate name for this anymore. I don't know what that's supposed to mean if it's from India or whatever, but Indian Yellow Hue. So this is like I guess an orangey, a yellowy orange. So if you just have a plain orange, I would maybe mix a little bit of yellow with it to get a color kind of like that. That's one of my favorite colors for fall. And I'm going to use, I find that primary yellow, like in this really bright color, I don't often see in the landscape that much. It's a nice accent color. So what I would do if you only have primary yellow is I would mix it a little bit with a brown or maybe an orange or even white to get a sort of wheat color. Like this is a Naples yellow, and I'll show you what it looks like on the palette in a second. I always kind of think of it as the color of like grass in the fall. And then, so this is what I have so far. Really primary red, sort of a darkened orange. So again, you can darken your orange with a bit of brown. The other thing in terms of color theory, if you want to bring more depth and darkness to a color, you might know this already, but you're going to want to use the opposite color on the color spectrum to bring that sort of darkness. And I guess darkness is the word, to make it a deeper hue. So if you want to take that orange and make it a little bit more of, well, I may as well show you. Why are you talking about it? I can show you. If I want to change that orange to be a bit of a darker color, the opposite color on the color spectrum is blue. So I'm going to use blue to darken it as opposed to black. So if it was yellow, let me make sure I have this right. If it's yellow, you're going to use purple. If it's red, you're going to use green. So it's like the primary and secondary colors. So you've got your primaries, red, yellow, blue, and then your secondary colors, green, purple, and orange. Those are what you're going to use to darken. And I'll show you as soon as I can open this. This little, there we go. The pliers come in handy. So I'm just going to take this little bit, I'm going to take a little piece of orange here on my paintbrush, and I'm going to show you in the corner because I may not use this color in the end, but I want to show you what it looks like to mix. So this tiny bit of orange here and this sort of cobalt blue. And if I want this orange to become sort of like a darker orange, I mean, this is making it look a little bit green, so I don't have enough orange. The blue is going to make it a more earthy tone. And again, I need to pick up more orange to show you that properly. So if you want something that's like, here's a color, here we go. We've mixed orange and blue, and you get kind of this, like, do you see the difference where you have, here, where you have this sort of like brighter orange here, and then with the green, oh, actually I'm using the wrong color, that's why, haha. We'll do a different example. That's why it's not working. I need it to be purple. Or no, what am I trying to do here? We'll do an example with red. Sorry guys, I'm getting mixed up as I go here. If I have a nice red in the top corner, I'm going to show you what it looks like if I add the opposite secondary color, which is green. So I'm going to add just a little dot of that in the top right. And that's how we get, we're just going to mix these two here. I've got green that's going to darken the red into a different kind of color. And you can see just a little bit how adding that little bit of green, hopefully you can see on the screen, makes it kind of a more burgundy, less of a pure red. And the more green I add, the darker in tone that's going to get. Oops, 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 oops.
So just asking a quick question here, Alana.
Yeah.
As not being very much of a painter, and I forget the last time I even really did paint, but
Yeah.
it's looking like you're more using smaller dabs of paint rather than like kind of squirting out a bunch of like a big blob of paint, like a bunch of different colors and having big blobs of color. You'd rather have like smaller things to mix and utilize rather. Is that how you would like suggest,
You
or
know,
does it all depend?
I think it depends. For me, that comes from trying to be economical with paints because, like, when I'm using more expensive paints, I obviously don't want to waste any. So I'm just
For
used to
sure.
being economical with it that way. But also, like in this case, where I took that red and kind of deepened it with the green to this more burgundy, sort of rusty color,
Yeah.
you don't need a lot of green. And if you put a ton of green on there, it's going to end up being a reddish green instead of a greenish red. So it's all about the kind of ratio. That being said, I put a big blob of each of these kind of orange, yellow, it's kind of like a hay color, orange, hay color, red, and I'm going to put another yellow here. I'll put a big blob because I'm going to use that to cover basically this whole third here. And I know I'm
Oh,
going to
okay.
go through that paint. So same with the blue and the gray that we used earlier. You can be, use as much as you want. The thing is, you can always add more. You can't put the paint
Right.
that you've taken out of the tube back into the tube. So that's the trick. That's me being a frugal
Good call.
person.
Thanks.
Being economical.
Oh, good call.
And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks for the question, Justin. So I'm gonna keep going with the green. Remember, I said I was gonna put that next to the yellow because I know myself. I know that I'm gonna want to mix that really nicely. And again, I think I already said this, but this yellow, unless we're talking flowers, I don't see this bright yellow that much in leaves. Usually there's a little bit of a green undertone or a brown undertone or an orange. So I'm going to use this as a mixing color rather than or like a highlighting color rather than as a straight color to paint a tree. So you'll see here, looking at the kind of finished piece I did before, we're basically going to build color that is, the grasses and these sort of like, I don't even know what kind of grass this is. There's a certain grass that has this like purpley fawn color that I love. It's not Phragmites. I know that it's a different native grass. But so what we're going to do, I think we'll start with the trees in the background here, because this is the foreground, really. The final third of this piece is really what you're seeing in front. So the grass is going to go in front. The river is going to go in front of the trees. So I'm going to suggest that we go ahead with doing the trees before we do the grasses and the final pieces of the water. So I'm going to use a smaller paintbrush on this one because, you guys can't see that very well. Let me make sure. Here we go. That's better. Here we go. I'm going to use a smaller one of the paintbrushes here to give me a little more flexibility with making some smaller pieces. So I'm going to start, because this big sort of golden tamarack tree here is in the background, I'm going to start with that tree. It's also going to be a nice way to sort of anchor the rest of the painting. I'll have that done, and that sets up the composition for me. So I'm going to start mixing my colors here. Start with a nice, really bright yellow, and I'm going to bring in an orange because the tamarack, I find, has a really beautiful orange, rusty yellow fall color. It's one of my favorite trees, actually. And we're going to, like, nothing that we paint is going to have only one color. Every tree, every type of grass, even the stream, nothing is going to have one flat color. We're always going to use a lighter color to enhance and highlight certain pieces, and we'll use a darker tone to show depth and shadow. So I'm going to start with the shadow for the tree. And one way to kind of start your figures this way is to imagine that there is a sun somewhere over here. Just for fun, and because I can, because it's a piece of cardboard, I'm going to paint a sun off of this painting, because there's my sun. And that's going to just allow me to kind of mark this as, okay, behind the clouds, there's a sun here, and this is what's shining on the trees, and that's where the shadow is going to go, because the shadow is going to go opposite. You know, just like when you make shadow puppets on the wall, the shadow goes opposite the figure that you're using on the wall. So on this painting, it's a little bit darker over here, and that's meant to be the shadow of this big tree. So let's start with the tree. I'm just going to do kind of I'm going to do a darker, I'm going to bring in a darker green actually. I didn't put the dark green on yet. And again, if you don't have a dark green, you can start with your normal green and add a bit of red, just like I did, to kind of get that deeper tone. I've got a green here that's called sap green. That's kind of a nice evergreen color. So I'm going to use that for some shadows and for some definition. I'm going to do a time check. I just want to make sure that I'm being respectful of your time here. We got about 45 minutes left. We can do it. We got this, guys. So I'm going to mix a little bit of this green, dark green, and yellow until I have, you know, again, don't be afraid to get messy with it. I have this kind of like medium green color here between the light green and dark green. And I'm just going to give a bit of a shadow. I'm going to imagine it's starting on this third here, and this is going to be the biggest piece of the tree. I'm making it bigger than that other tree, by the way. I think it's going to look better if we make it bigger than this one. Just my 2 cents. So I'm doing the sort of background of this tree here, and we're going to come back to this and add another layer. But for now, this is kind of like the darker side of the larch. It can be whatever evergreen you want. I'm just going to call it a larch because I think I'm going to make it yellow. So I'll make that quite tall. And it's going to have this really nice base here as well. So that's still a ways in the distance. We're going to have that be this huge tree. And then compared to this tree, I'm actually going to play with the scale and keep these trees kind of the same size that I had in the example painting. I just want this tree to stand out more, to be more of like a statement piece, or a specimen tree, as we would say in landscape architecture. So I'm going to move on to do basically the background of each of these trees here. So I just did a piece of what's behind this yellow tree here. I'm going to move over, and I've got 2 evergreens, one smaller, one bigger, and I'm going to do the back, basically the shadow side of those. So I'm going to use the dark tone here, that quite dark green that's still mixed with the lighter one to give it a bit of dimension, but that's going to be my dark tree. And I'm going to, remember the line that we drew up here, that sort of like third line? I'm going to use that first horizontal line to kind of mark the top of that tree. You can even draw a straight line to give yourself a bit of like an anchor. So I'll have one tree like that, and I'll have one tree like this, maybe a little bit smaller. And then they're both going to have really simple dark shadows. This is going to be like making up sort of the background of the tree. And again, because my sun is over here, this imaginary sun, the far side of the tree is going to be darker. So this would be a good place if you wanted to kind of put a deeper shade. This would be a great place to put the deeper colors. And just like in real life, if the sun is coming from the top left over here, the bottom right, the opposite, is what's going to have a shadow. So bottom right of the tree is going to be like this. Below these branches is going to have a shadow like this. Just like that. Make sense? I think so. Okay, so we've got kind of the back of these trees done. I'm going to give a little bit more, little darkness here for this side. And then, okay, and now on to, I think what I'll do here is we'll do sort of a general background. And this will be where we're going to do like a hazy looking kind of background of trees. And this is going to be because when you look at things in the landscape, what you see right in front of you is more detailed because it's closer up. That's just the way our eyes work. So the further out we get, the more blurry it gets, the less detail you want to put in. So the most detailed pieces that we're going to work on are going to be the things that are closest to us. So in this case, it'll be the foremost trees, but especially the bottom detail here, where you'll have the grasses and the stream, because that's what you're closest to as the viewer. So I'm going to use a bigger brush just because it's going to be, I'm going to use some water as well, actually, to kind of like loosen up the paint a little bit to give it a more watercolor effect. And I'm going to make a color that's sort of like peachy or orangey, somewhere in there. I might use orange with a bit of white. Might have to pick up some white, actually, I do. This is why I always need to buy 3 times more white paint than I do other colors. So I'm going to use that white to create a sort of softer effect because, again, this is like the background we're going to work on. So I'm going to soften up a yellow, create a really nice light background, and I'm going to soften up an orange as well. And I'll show you what that looks like in a sec. Yeah, so I'm creating these colors here. Oh, let's get this to not shine so bright. Trying to get you to see the colors more accurately. So I've got kind of like a lighter yellow, a lighter orange I'm mixing to make it a little bit less detailed. The color is a little bit less intense. And I'm going to use a big brush, maybe a little more pigment, maybe a little red even. To make that's perfect, actually. I just mixed some red in. And I really like what's happening there as I get this almost peachy looking color here with red, yellow. And I'm going to use that to really broadly add color here as a background, basically. And this is where you can start having fun with the color that you laid down at the beginning, like these blue pieces that I've left. You can leave those uncovered by the red, the pink, that kind of melon color that we just made, and allow the blue to come through if you like it. You can always color over it if you don't like it. It's a nice part. So this is just kind of me creating a bit of a maple forest. I'm looking at like a beach maple forest vibe here. So soft colors in the back, just enough to kind of go over and overlap the sky that we've already painted. And I'm going to put some back here too, because why not? Keep in mind, this is just the background that we have right now for these evergreen trees. So there's no harm in going right on top of it to create what's behind them. This will give nice dimension when we go over it again with the yellow or with deeper greens. And what's happening for me now, I don't know if you guys are experiencing this too, but I'm getting like a nice sort of blend. Like the longer I use that paint color that I'm blending on the canvas or the board in this case, the less harsh it is. Like the more time I spend with this paintbrush on the board, you can see how this side is kind of softer, a little bit more natural looking. This looks a bit blocky still. So I'm going to use that paintbrush to just kind of blend on the board. And again, I'm going to go over the lines here because this line is where the grasses, the sort of like riverside grassland is going to come in, but you always want to overlap so you don't have any pieces that are kind of missing without paint on them. And I'm kind of liking what's happening there. I like that orange in the background. And I'm going to add a little bit of a yellow. I've kind of neglected the yellow. So I'm going to get, again, a nice soft color. And this, I think what I'll do is I'll start shaping a couple trees here. And again, because the sun's coming from over here, I'm going to highlight with the lighter color on this side. So we'll say there's a tree, we'll say there's another tree. and we'll stay there. And I may end up cutting this back a fair bit to just have like a smaller, what would you call it? To have the grass come up a little bit more to keep this tree line smaller so it looks like it's further back in perspective. Because I want this to have a little bit of depth to it as opposed to being like a really zoomed in picture. But we will see as we go. Okay, so we have some nice background. I think it's time to bring in, let's go in and kind of do the second layer then for the trees. So we're gonna stick this guy in here. I'm gonna go back with the smaller brush that I was working with before that had the green on it. And I'm just washing it out a bit because I wanna kind of clear it of all this really dense saturated green paint. I'd like to add more yellow, so. There we go. So let's figure out a really nice color. Actually, I still have to clean this brush a little bit more. So give me one sec. I've got to reach to get my paper towel. Out of my reach. And I'm just going to kind of get this really saturated paint off this brush before I dip it in the yellow. Okay, toss that there. Okay, so let's find a really nice yellow color for our tree. It's gonna have, I'm mixing the primary yellow with a bit of green. And I'm gonna mix it with some orangey red as well. Orangey red as well. And so far I'm not liking my color. I want it to be a little bit more, I kind of want it to be a nice golden color. So I think what I need, I'm gonna add a bit more yellow. Okay. There we go. I've got a deep yellow and I've got that bright yellow as well. So I'm gonna do kind of a mid layer here. Working with this sort of, it's like an orangey gold kind of color. It's the color, it's that yellowy gold color that you see on tamarack trees in fall after they've kind of started to turn their leaves. So we're gonna go on top of the background that we've already started here. And this is gonna be using a smaller paintbrush, actually even smaller. If you have a smaller one, I suggest using a smaller one than this. I'm just going to use this to kind of lightly dot some color on. Just give it some dimension. And you have a main trunk, and then you have sort of in a V shape or in a horizontal shape. You're going to have these branches coming off of it. So you want the branches to be a little thicker at the base of the tree, or rather at the trunk of the tree. And then they're going to be a little wispier as they get out to the end. And this is where I'm going to employ a different brush. So if you have a smaller brush, this is kind of a nice place to use a small one like this. If you don't have one, it's okay. Just go really lightly with the smallest brush that you have. But this is a nice way you can kind of put extra detail in. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to just dot this on in sort of an irregular pattern. And I'm using this, I'm not just using one color as I go. I'm kind of picking up from different parts of the palette where I have a sort of peachy orange here. The color looks a little bit off on the screen, to be honest, but a peachy orange and then kind of like a gold orange and then a bit of yellow as well. Like I'll use this yellow down here for a highlight on the same side as the sun. So I'll throw the yellow in there. And you don't want to totally go over the dark green because the green gives a nice background dimension still, but we're going to cover a lot of the green and keep that dark green as the shadow, the underbelly of the tree kind of. So I'm just using a light touch, a little bit of an irregular sort of approach to this tree, not too much green. but keeping the green shadow as I go. And I'm gonna bring in a little bit more yellow as well. I'm starting to want that like highlighting yellow where it would catch the sun. So the top parts of the branches. The left side here is where it would be catching the sun. If we imagine the sun is to the left of the canvas. A little more yellow on the tops here. And I'm going to put a little bit more orange here, kind of get that green sort of sorted out. How's it going, guys? Does anyone feel comfortable lifting up their painting to kind of show their progress? Asking for new tips, or how's it going? The floor is open. I got a thumbs up from Justin, so that's good. Okay, so here's one tree just about done. Keeping in mind, we can definitely come back to this. Like there's nothing to say that we can't do this. Finish this tomorrow or this weekend, or, you know, sit with it for a little bit and see how we feel about it. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So I'm gonna leave that for now. That's my large tree. And then I'm gonna go back to these guys. I'm actually gonna use a bigger brush on this because I don't want these trees to be quite as detailed. They're not the front tree. So I'm gonna go like with a medium-sized paintbrush, a little bit of water to give it that like sort of an easier blend. And we're gonna make a nice green. So if you have white or gray still on your palette, this might be a good time to blend like a primary, or not a primary, but like that regular apple green, a secondary color, to blend that in with some gray maybe, to give it a little bit more of a sort of natural evergreen color. So I'm blending my gray with like this dark evergreen color here, and it's working pretty well. It's giving me this kind of like olive green shade. So in the middle, I've got this kind of olive green that I got from mixing gray with this deep sap color, like a bottle green. And I'm just gonna really lightly, same thing. I have a fruit fly on the painting. Apologies for that. And I'm just gonna do the same thing, just light, you know, kind of random strokes, nothing too, like you want to be organic, nothing too geometric. And in that typical kind of conifer form. And then the same thing here, I'm going to do, we've got like the deeper color set, so I'm going to use maybe a slightly yellowy green. I'm gonna mix this kind of golden yellow with the dark green and see what happens. Yeah, maybe give it a little bit of a white. So we'll have kind of a soft lime green that I'm gonna use for a highlight there. I'm just gonna do, again, the tops here, wherever you think the light would hit that tree. So the tops of the branches, the left side, it'll be sort of the brighter side. Just dotting it kind of. And then I'm going to make this front tree a little bit darker because based on where the sun is, this tree here would be blocking this tree from the sun. So it's going to be a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to do that. Can't even tell what the color looks like because the light is shining so brightly. There we go. So that's fine for now. We can come back to that in a little bit. And one thing I might do in the meantime is just give a little bit of a shadow on this side for each of these conifers. And this, I'm going to make it look like this is reflecting. I'm going to use something that's similar to that color to make a shadow that would reflect either on the grasses or into the stream. And either way, that's just going to kind of guide. Like I said, with acrylic, we can paint right over it again. So if I don't like that color, I might just make it a different color of blue on the stream, a little bit of a darker color of yellow on the grass, whatever is going to work to make that shadow. So we've got a couple trees. Let's take it. We've got half an hour left to get this done. So let's take it to the really broad strokes of the others in the background here. I'm going to go back to the sort of mid-range paint. Oopsies. Middle of the road paintbrush I was using, this little cheapo dollar store one, this guy. And again, I just want to make sure it's not too saturated with water because otherwise it's going to be too goofy. So I'm just kind of blotting it. Okay, so let's get some red now. We've got nice peach background. I'm going to put a couple trees here. I've got an orange, a couple reds. We'll start on this side, I guess. Let's get a nice unfussy orange color here. It's a nice fall orange. And I'm going to make it so that this becomes basically our horizon line. And I'm going to leave a little bit of this peachy kind of color at the top to represent the trees that are behind the immediate view. So we're going to give a little bit of depth. I want to kind of give the impression that we have a series of trees here that are sort of front row in this like rural area. And I'm going to make this look like a sugared maple. So it's kind of almost pear-shaped, I guess. I don't want to get this wrong. I've got a lot of people on the call who probably know a lot more about plants than I do, but I'll give it kind of a nice soft canopy. And then we'll do some red. I'm going to cut it down from this like really primary bright red though. I think if I use this color alone, it's going to be too harsh. Like I can even see putting it on the board, it becomes too bright. So I'm going to take that red down a little bit. I'm going to mix it with some green and make it like a bit of a deeper red. I think I'm going to put a little bit of white on it as well, so it becomes not pink, but I want it to have like a lighter color to it. How's everyone doing? Having fun, I hope. So I'm going to take some of that white because it just seems way too bright to me. So I'm going to like bring that down so it's more of a, it looks like pink on my palette, but I think when I put it on the board, I think it's going to look a little bit more natural. So I'm mixing the red into like a pinky sort of business with a little orange. That is much better. Yeah. That I think it ends up being a much better color. It's got some white in it. It's got a little bit of orange in it. It's a little bit more natural than like the bright red. So it still looks red in the landscape. Like when I put that color on, I think it still looks like a red tree. And same thing, we're just gonna make sort of like a loose shape. We'll have some small trees perhaps, we'll have some bigger trees. And I would like to put in some yellow trees too. I think like birch and alder, not alder, but what am I thinking of? Poplars and that kind of thing. Trees that tend to go yellow in the fall and tend to have more of a narrow habit. So I'm going to do those as well. Put a couple of those in. Really loose, like nothing, you know, we don't have to be too prescriptive about this, but I'll add some bright yellow to this to kind of bright yellow with like a little bit of white to kind of give it a more natural yellow color. And we'll do the same thing here. We'll add a couple, you know, add some yellow trees for fun, a little yellow in front. And then I'm gonna add over here, I've got a couple more evergreens in the back and I've got a couple of red trees as well. So, you know, just enjoying the process. Yellow, and then I said evergreens over here. And I'm being quite loose with this. I'm really not fussing about the detail. I'm kind of just focusing on using a bunch of different colors and layering. So whatever order you do it in, it doesn't really matter, but layering so that there's a highlight, there's kind of a middle base color, and then there's a darker color to give you some depth, some shadow, dimension, that kind of thing. And for these trees in here, I'm going to mix a red and a green to get this sort of burgundy color. So that's just green and red put together. And that's going to be sort of the shadow that I have here for these guys. And again, I might end up going over this in a minute with my grasses, but I just kind of want to lay, what would I call it? It's like a template in a way. Even if I go over these colors, it shows me where I want to have the shadow layer. So this is kind of my shadow outline. And because these trees are rounded in their canopy, we'll do a rounded shadow. And because these trees are pointy, we're gonna do the pointy shadow. Pardon the noise as I do this. Okay, so we've got some basic stuff there. We'll let that dry a little bit and we'll come back to add a little bit more dimension at the end. Hopefully we'll have time to do that. And in the meantime, let's not hurry, but let's move on to the grasses. So the fun part with these is there are so many colors of grasses in the fall that I really think you can make up your own game plan here and go with what works. For me, I like to start with the grasses along the riverbank being a little bit more green, because often I'll observe that the closer things are to a water source, the kind of brighter, the more verdant they tend to be. So I start with kind of a bright green, really saturated greens on the riverbank. And then the further away from that they go, I get to be a bit more yellow, a bit more dried out. You can kind of get like raffia colors or like a really soft pinks and purples, colors like hay and that kind of thing. So I'm going to start with the farthest and then kind of work our way towards the more detailed pieces here. So in the back, farther away from the stream, I've got this sort of hay colored grass. So it can be sort of peachy. You can pick up a little bit of, I mean, I'm really at this point, I start to mix from all over my palette, all the different colors that I've got at my disposal. So I'll start to use like, I'm kind of going for, I need more yellow. I've got some good pinks here, but I need a nice like autumn color yellow, a deep yellow. And this might be a good point as well to add a bit of white. Like for each of these colors here, I've used white in them to make them a little more subtle, a little more natural, I guess. Like if you think about the stuff that you would buy, like, you know, when they sell hay tea, when you go to the farmer's market or you go to the nursery and they have all those like fun Halloween decorations, I'm thinking of the color of hay. And right now I have a little bit too much pink on this, so I've got to squeeze out my paintbrush. These are the perils of using cheap paintbrushes, is that I have to squeeze them out like this every time. But it's okay, because you can make it work. You don't need to have the fancy stuff. Okay, so we've got a little bit of white. We've got this nice kind of light yellow color going on. And I'm going to use that to just really gently put some kind of rather vertical lines here to start off. And this line of the blue is showing where we're going to go with the river. So I'm going to echo that line shape as I go along. So here, further along the river, vertical lines. And I don't know if you can tell, it's hard to see a little bit, but I think you can see on the computer. If you use a dry brush technique where this isn't wet anymore, I've got just kind of a thick dab of paint on it, and you lightly brush it across paint that's already dried, you get an interesting technique. So I'll show you here. You kind of get these rough, like, I don't know what I would call it, but you get a different treatment. You don't just get like one saturated splotch of color. You get to see the color behind it, and you get these kind of organic shapes from the brush when you use a dry brush technique. So it's kind of a fun thing to try. So just pick up some more, follow that line of the river. And your river can look different than mine. And I'm using whatever colors I have on this brush. I still have some pink left on it, and I'm okay with that. I'm not fussed about the pink coming through. So I'm just kind of using what colors I have to create this grasscape here. And I'm going to do a line here in using a bit more yellow, I guess, on the back side of the river. And I'm going to keep this really, not too detailed, because I want it to be showing some perspective. So I don't want it to be like, you can see every blade of grass. I want it to be kind of showing the massing of grass as opposed to all the details, because when you look at something in nature, that's what you're going to see. You'll see the detail up close, and you'll see it a bit fuzzy further away. So here it's more the kind of like amorphous sense of there being grass over there than it being like each blade. I'm just kind of keeping it messy. And we'll come back to these shadows again. Like, these are just kind of outlining where they are right now. You can see that as I go over it with a different color, the shadows are becoming less obvious, a little bit more subtle. And don't be afraid to go over, like, keeping in mind, this is like whiteout. You can go over your painting as many times as you want. So I'm not worried that I'm kind of infringing on these trees here, because these grasses are in front of the tree. And that's what I want. I want there to be this sort of like ethereal, soft grass growing here. And I'm going to soften these shadows too. I think what I'll do is I'll get like an in-between color. So I'll work with this sort of like light yellow that I've been working with. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker. So maybe like a blend between this burgundy and this light yellow to create the color that I want to have to be the shadow on the grass. So this is what it ends up looking like. It's kind of a mix of pink and green. I get this like sort of earthy color. It's like a light olive, but it's also got a pink in it. It's not really easy to describe this color that I made here, but I'm going to use that. And I'm going to kind of introduce that as a shadow on top of the shadow that, like the deeper shadow tone that we've already brought in. And I think that's going to make it look a little bit more natural. And actually, I quite like that color. I think that works well. So we've got a couple layers of grass. Let's take that yellow that we've been using over here and start to add a little bit more green into it. So you get that sense of it being more verdant, maybe like a yellowy green, something in between the two colors. You can always feel free to soften it with white too. So I'm doing a color like that, kind of like a light limey, yellowy green. And I'm gonna bring that in as kind of the second layer of grasses. And again, I'm just doing vertical motions here to kind of echo the shape that a grass would take in the landscape. And I'm making sure I don't totally go over the river at this point. I'm starting to kind of get to the edges here, just to make sure I'm covering all the various spots. Making some good progress, I think. So a little bit more green, a little bit more yellow, and we can kind of introduce layers of these as we go. And I'm following the curve of this water course, but you don't really have to have it be so particular. You can have it be really, you know, you can also have like, say we'll have a green patch here. Like in nature, you'll see, you know, one plant here, one plant there in this very organic composition. It's not going to be like, you know, a formal planting, right? So we want it to look natural. And I'm going to bring this forward as I start to kind of paint the bottom here. Again, just kind of having fun with like whatever colors on my brush at this point. I can always come in later and add more detail. I can always come in and add more color definition to, more shading, more highlights. And now we're getting kind of close to the board being totally full of color, which is kind of fun. And so what I'm seeing here, I'm going to add, now that I've got the kind of basic composition good, I'm going to add on this side that green I was telling you about to kind of show that as we get closer to the edge of the river, this is going to be smooth. We're going to take away a little of that choppiness. I'm going to introduce some really nice deep green. And then in this front part over here, I'm going to introduce more of a light, like a light pink or light yellow, something that looks very, very fall. Like a wild grasses is kind of what we're going for here. Okay, so I've got kind of a basic line of green. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of a curve to the river here. Just for interest, kind of make it look a little. Bring this out. I think what I'll do, yeah, I think I'll bring this out a little bit. I'll use this like. Bringing these grasses back right out to the front of the water course. And as I put it here in the foreground, we're getting this sense too of having more detail right in front of us. So this is going to be more detailed than what you see in the back. Okay. And here's a good chance now, I would say, to kind of start adding little details that'll make it your own. So we've got the outline of the river. We've got the general outline of where the grass starts and where the sort of vegetation in the back starts. And this is where I'd say, let's start having fun with like, I kind of want maybe a light green section, almost like a lime green. Like a light lime green. And I kind of want to have this be, I don't know what kind of plant. I don't know. I'm going to put the color down and I'll decide. And I want this to be my sort of like foreground here. And I think just to echo this on the other side, I want to show that there's some green plants on this side as well. Just a little bit of interest. So here would be, once you've got all your color down in the background, this would be a good time to bring out a smaller paintbrush again and start introducing some of that detail. So we've got about 10 minutes to go as we're on this call. And I'd like to open this up. You know, it's a good time. If anybody has questions while we're still on, please feel free to ask them. If you want to share what you're working on, please feel free to do that as well. And in the meantime, we'll just keep going on our individual paintings. How are they looking? I'm gonna pick on Justin, ask him how Justin's painting is going.
It's going. I mean, I'll show.
Yeah, please do.
I'm not so sure about it, but
safe space, Justin.
There
nice. We've got some good depth there. Yeah.
The colors for making it a little more yellow weren't working in the background. I'm still trying to play with that a bit, but anyways.
Yeah. Nice. Thanks for sharing. Okay, who
Yeah.
else, guys? Who else wants to share what they've got going on? I'm eager to see. I've noticed people working diligently this whole time.
People are very focused, it seems.
I know, you guys focus away. I can't fault you for that. So this is where you're gonna take your painting like in the last 10 minutes from like 90 to 100 if you're able to use a small brush and add some detail. And I would suggest really just light strokes, put some reeds in there. If you're like me and you love Queen Anne's lace, maybe throw some Queen Anne's lace there, little dots of white. Actually, what I'll do is I'll have, I'm gonna do some stems. Just kind of throw the bases of some plants in here. And then I'll do a little bit of like a white dot for Queen Anne's lace. A series of white dots. It's a nice opportunity actually if you have like, favorite wildflowers or like memories of different plants that you remember seeing by a creek as a child, or things that connect you to your youth or connect you to your spirituality. This is where you can make it totally your own. And then the rules that we'll keep in mind, imagine that sun off in the corner again. And we'll use that to lighten up the edges here for each of these. A little bit of pink. The pink can lighten up the red. And then I'm going to use some green to darken up that red again. That seems to be the theme of the colors for me today, is using green to darken red to bring some dimension into this end over here. And I'll pick certain colors, and I like to do, like I'll use this gold here to sort of integrate with this limey green and mix them a bit to create sort of natural looking aquatic plant life. And then if you want to, you can also use this time to, sorry, I'm kind of talking. I'm speaking as I'm thinking here. So I'm doing two things at once. But you can also use this time to pick out sort of a deeper blue color you might want to use to emphasize that river a little bit. I've got a really bright blue here that I have to cut with a gray to make it more realistic, because so often we have to kind of bring a little bit of a muted tone into the paint colors to make it look realistic in the landscape. But here I have like a nice, I would say it's like a slate blue color on my paintbrush. I'm just going to add some shadow on the side of the river. Ooh, and I've got this super deep purple. Remember that purple I was using that was like almost black? It's really pigmented. And I need to cut it with white, but I'm going to use that as well to kind of create a bit of an accent, a little shadow on this side of the river. So we're doing pretty well here. And I find too, when you look at the surface of water, you'll have these ripple shapes, very like loose organic shapes, very sort of curvy shapes on the water. It's usually not too harsh. It's usually a bit of a, what did I call it? Yeah, like a softness to it. And surprise, surprise, when you integrate water with your acrylic, you get a really nice water effect. So if you want to give it a little bit more looseness and loosen the paint up a little bit, just throw some water on and kind of wiggle it around a bit, move the paint around. So guys, I'm not quite done. I still have work to do on this, but I'm pretty happy with where I've gotten it today. And we're almost out of time. Oopsies. So I'm thinking this might be a good place to stop and kind of just see if there are any questions. And I would love to see what people have created if you're willing to share. If you'd like to tell me or like the rest of the group about a piece that you enjoy or a piece that you found challenging in the artwork, or if you have any feedback on how we ran this, we're certainly open to that. And I'm going to open the floor to everybody. But if you don't have anything to say, and I know who you are, I might just ask you to weigh in if you don't have anything to offer right away, because like we do truly want.
Hey, that's looking good, Joanne.
Oh, let's see. Okay, I'm going to unpin myself so I can see everybody else's. Hold on. Got to figure out this. Remove pin. Okay, let's see. Joanne, where's Joanne?
Oh yeah, great job.
Nice. Oh, look at Karen.
I'm missing this. Oh, yeah, everybody hold them up. Oh my gosh, beautiful, guys.
Jeff, nice.
Awesome.
Lauren, very nice. Oh yeah, nice
gosh.
job, Sean.
I cannot, wow, beautiful.
Look at these, fantastic.
I want to put this into gallery view so we can see them all at the same time. I wonder if I can do that.
I found it stressful and relaxing both at the same time.
Oh.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
Perfect. Stressful is what we were going for.
That was fun.
That's great. Oh, here, I can put into gallery. Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, please, everybody hold your stuff up. Oh my gosh. Joanna has incredible color. Super saturated. Oh my gosh, Karen. Guys, these are amazing. Beautiful. This
Awesome
is
job,
awesome.
everyone.
I love seeing the partners too. Like, I love that you guys have brought family out and have the kids out and partners out and stuff. That's perfect. That's exactly what we were hoping would happen.
Yeah. Alana, this is a great experience, so thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. It's so nice to see you. It's been what, like 5 years probably since I've seen you. Does anybody have any feedback, you know, in terms of like what we know closed captioning would help this go better if we did it again?
Alana,
Go ahead.
you're better than Bob Foss.
Thank you. I'm working on the beard, not quite there. But you know, yeah, he's a legend. I was told by my sister, if all else fails, just put Bob Ross on in the background and no one will give you a hard time.
Yeah.
But yeah. But this is, you guys, I mean, I'm really impressed. I'm really happy to see what you've all created like this. I love that they're all different. I love that even with the same kind of experience, we all have a different color palette. We all have slightly different compositions, like really cool, guys.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Well, we had a good instructor. Thanks, Alana.
Oh,
Exactly.
thanks.
That was fun.
Okay, and other feedback, like, so we know closed captioning would be better for actually probably for everybody next time. So we'll work on that. What about other things? How's the pace? Is this too fast? Was this too slow? Do I talk too much? Because yes, I do, but you know.
It was really good. I thought it worked really well.
Okay, great. And would you guys be interested in doing this again sometime if we did one in like 2022? Would you want to try a different, like, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Hi, Jay Lisa. Jay's back from swimming. Hi, guys. So proud of the work you've done. You've done such beautiful paintings, guys. Okay, well, I'm happy to leave it here. You know, if anybody has any final comments, please feel free to throw them in the chat, or it's an open forum. I know I've just been talking for 2 hours straight, but it is, you know, this is for all of us. So happy to hear feedback, or if you want to share something about your painting.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, I can
Awesome.
thank you very much. Yeah, I can just wrap things up for everyone. So again, a huge thank you to Alana. So thank you so much for being our teacher tonight, and you know, yes, round of applause for Alana. You know, being our teacher and taking us through this. It was a ton of fun. I can tell everyone really enjoyed it, and like Alana said, if there's any feedback, please feel free to reach out to us. But I guess, again, also want to shout out to Magdalene, Jeff, and Sean. Thanks again, guys, for your sponsorship on this event. It was really appreciated. So one thing I will mention, that if anyone is feeling, no matter what you feel about your, if you're really excited or really happy with your piece, one thing that we were wanting to do was some sort of kind of like a silent auction, if you will, for donating their paintings. And then we were going to try and do something on the OLA website in the members area that people could buy other members' paintings if they, wanted to do that. And then that would go towards the endowment fund for both the university programs at University of Guelph and University of Toronto. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out. Julian can assist with that. And then the only other item that I'd like to bring up towards social committee is that it feels like a long ways away, but it'll be just around the corner, is the OLA curling bonspiel. So this is very first take at an in-person event since early 2020, before obviously everything locked down and we went into pandemic mode. So that will be held on Saturday, November 6th. I believe the advertisement was just released this week, within the last day or two. So get a team together. We will make sure that all safety measures and government health regulations are met. So it will be a very open and safe environment, and obviously a lot of fun, of course. So look into it. More advertisements on that will be coming down the line as well. So with that, that's all I have. So again, big thank you to Alana and Magdalene for tonight. It was a great time, and we'll look to do this in 2022 maybe. So with that, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks so
Great.
much for
Thank
coming.
you.
Bye.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, guys.